Hello, everybody. My name's James. Welcome to another Planet FPL Clash of the Correspondents. And I can bet you our Wolves correspondent, Bradley Parker, didn't think that Wolverhampton Wanderers would be safe with 5 games to go. How are you, Bradley?
Very good, thank you.
Yes,
The
not too
bleach is put
bad.
away.
And I'm sure before Sam Martin's Leicester City last played Wolves, I don't suppose Sam thought he'd be relegated with 5 games to go. How are you, Sam?
Yeah, been better, but yeah, probably past caring now at this point. So it was accepted many weeks ago. Yeah, over it now.
I hear that, mate. I was just saying to you off camera before we started, I couldn't believe the remarkable stat that when you guys played each other in December, if you'd have won, Sam, you'd have gone 8 points clear of Wolves.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy, and I think that's as much as I'm more than happy to be here and slag Leicester off to high heavens. It genuinely got to the point where it's this sort of hatred towards them, and everyone associated there. And you do have to take your hat off to Wolves, and they've done a really good job. They've been really strong. Picked up some sort of great results and got points all over the country. So fair play to them. They deserve to stay up. And um, yeah, you compare the trajectories of the two clubs since then, and it's been very opposite.
That was Pereira's first game, Bradley, right?
Yeah, first game.
How good has he been, mate?
Excellent. Just changing the whole dynamics of the. I think all the players as well. You can tell they all buy into him. Where it was quite clearly a very fractured football club when he walked in the door, but he's ironed everything out and recruited quite well in January.
I think you'd be sixth, I think, isn't it? Since he took charge.
Something like that.
It's
Yeah.
remarkable the turnaround. A team that couldn't stop conceding goals. Managed to even win games sometimes with clean sheets, starting with those back-to-back clean sheets against Leicester and then a few days later against Manchester United. Has he done too well, Bradley? In a weird
Uh,
sort of sense. Is there a bit of
Maybe in a weird sort of
fear that
way. Yeah.
others, my team's going to need a manager by the looks of it?
The only thing I worry about is if the board messed about again in the summer. Vitor's history would suggest if he's pissed off, he's not the sort of bloke to hang around too long. So they need to be very careful, I think.
It's interesting because a lot of the warnings, because he got linked heavily with the Everton job when Frank Lampard took over at Everton, and obviously got links with you, and all the reports were like he's a bit of a hothead. He goes in, he does his thing, and he pisses everyone else off, and it'll either do really well or it'll blow up. He certainly, not only has he done really well, I find him quite charming to listen to, Bradley. He comes across
Yeah,
really well. He's positive, he's calm, he's very supportive, but he also feels like you can tell he's got maybe a little bit of a ruthless side to him. But he comes across well. We've joked about it recently about him being spotted out in the Weatherspoons in Wolverhampton, mixing with the people. He's bought into the ethos of managing Wolverhampton Wanderers, right?
yeah, definitely, and that buys him credit as well for because eventually Wolves form will probably turn poor again at some point next season. Like it's not going to continue forever unless we want to do a Forest next
So
year. Like
does the football club kick on now, or do you sell Cunha, João Gomez, Andre in the summer, and we go through this again next
uh,
year?
Cunha's definitely going. We are going to Man United, isn't he? Apparently, that will be
Sounds like it might be.
interesting fit.
Yeah,
Um,
well, dysfunctional football club with player who never loses his head.
but I think like he's proved that without Cunha, he gets results. So I think that period is really important as well. Like those were massive games, and Vitor found a way to win, and he's improved players like Bellegarde, who looked like they had absolutely no future here after this season. But now Bellegarde is was probably missed actually a little bit on Sunday. To be fair, he gives a lot more shape to the team. Like Cunha off the ball was again quite lackadaisical, whereas Bellegarde he would always track back, get into shape. The team in general just works a lot harder. You can see they all fight for each other now.
He's X Factor though, Cunha, isn't he?
He's X Factor, but sometimes X Factor gets him in trouble, doesn't it? Now, so
What happens if he doesn't get back to Pereira in the summer then? I mean, could this be the Lopetegui saga all over again?
yeah, it could
I'm
be.
not meaning to kind of
I can
drag the
see it.
mood down, but I'm just looking at it from the
No, it's
outside.
valid. It's valid because the board have just shown, like the last two times, they're quite willing to just shaft the manager, even though they shouldn't be looking at it like we've got a good thing here. We've probably looked into it a little bit, but we give him a few more players that he needs. He's proved he can build a solid team with the players that was already at the football club. So just give him a little bit more for his shape because we're going to need a lot of forwards anyway because we're going to lose quite a lot in the summer. So they're going to
What
have
do you
to
think?
replace
What do
them.
you think you'll lose in the summer?
They'll lose Cunha. Sarabia will go. Guedes will go. They'll finally sell Fabio Silva for a decent fee because he's had quite a decent season in La Liga. Who else? They might sell Wang. Vitor doesn't particularly use him a lot since he's coming. He has had a few injuries as well. He's just kind of dead weight, to be honest.
If you
They might
keep
as well
that
just get rid
midfield
of him.
that midfield pairing together though, Andre and João Gomez, mate,
Yeah,
and
they'll be
fit
there.
next season, I can't see you'd be in trouble, mate.
No, they are Champions League level centre midfield pairing. We're extremely lucky. Like
I
Andre is
don't
one of the
even. I
best
mean,
midfielders in the league for me.
those two are capable of certainly getting to that level. I don't
Yeah,
even think
definitely.
that's a
No, doubt.
wild statement, Bradley. I'll take it
No,
on
it's not.
board.
I don't know.
Sam, where do we start here? Manager first. What's the sentiment towards Ruud Van Nistelrooy? And do I need to timestamp this and say we're recording on Tuesday night? Because we've obviously the relegation being confirmed on Sunday. Is there any danger here of a change before the weekend?
Well, I think most Leicester fans, well, I say most Leicester fans, 99% of Leicester fans would hope that was the case. And it was probably not something that we'd ever thought about. That clauses like that, you kind of forget that those things exist until Southampton confirmed their sacking sort of the moment that they got relegated. And sort of Leicester fans kind of went, "Oh, that's what we're doing. That's why he's still in the job." And then when the relegation got confirmed, we were like, "Oh, it will happen in a minute." And then nothing came. Rob Darcett, who's one of the sort of the reporters that works, in this local area, he reported this morning that we can't sack him for financial fair play rules. So it will have to be that we come to a joint agreement. There is no clause, I don't think. There is no relegation clause, which is just a sort of perfect sort of example of how poorly we've been ran, certainly over the last, say, 5 years or so. Ultimately, I can't see any way that Van Nistelrooy would want to be at the club next year. And I think that the damage has been done between the two. And I was probably one of not the last to sort of to feel that way, but I did have a lot of sympathy for him at the beginning, because it was quite evident that the team was so poor, and he wasn't backed in January, and that wasn't his fault. But there's been such a sort of he's been so unwilling to change formation, change shape. We hadn't scored a goal in however many games, and we were playing the same side every week and just getting battered every week. So I think Leicester fans have lost patience. No one's warmed to him, which is you're never going to. We haven't scored at home since December. It's hard to get the fans on side when you've got fans that pay a lot of money to go and they watch a team that genuinely looks like it isn't trying week in, week out. And I was strong with how I worded it, but I think a lot of Leicester fans, it is that sort of, dare I say, hatred towards the entire setup, because people think, why should we care if the players seemingly don't? Winks is sort of not coming to the ground, then there's a fallout. His missus is posting like photos of him out for coffee on match day, and then Van Nistelrooy was asked about that. He said no, all players should be there, and it's the tensions are so high, and everyone's sort of so upset at each other. I personally think it's a relationship that won't wake its way back. I'm just hoping that Van Nistelrooy thinks the same thing and doesn't think, I've got to prove myself and turn this around, which would be the danger.
On Harry Winks, I read a report that all the players were asked to stay at the training ground one night
Uh,
a week, and
so
he'd refused. That was the rumor I'd heard.
Yeah, I think that is kind of what the link is. I think it was that they expected the players to, for those that don't live in the area, they sort of expected the players one night a week to stay. And yeah, he basically refused. Now I don't know. You try all manner of things when you're scrapping from relegation. I tend to side with the manager there. Really, I don't think it's too unreasonable, and obviously it's hard. We don't know what conversations have gone on behind closed doors and stuff like that. And the difficulty is, if Van Nistelrooy was to leave, every Leicester fan would want Winks back in the side for the Championship. Because he
So it
was
has been counterproductive.
yeah. He was so strong last year, and we would welcome him, back in the side next year. And that's the problem with managers, that they do have short lives, don't they? The club will soon move on, and everyone will forget about it. And like I said, I've said it to you before. It wasn't Van Nistelrooy's fault that he got appointed. It wasn't his fault that he's not experienced enough. He's not ready enough. He's probably not tactically astute enough. And the same way that it wasn't Cooper's fault when he came into the fold, and sort of similar situations. And a lot of people will say, "Oh, we should have never sacked Cooper," and bits and pieces like that. And although I think Cooper's side would have fared better over the 38 games or 33 games, whatever we are now, I genuinely believe both sides would have gone down. I don't think it would have changed that. The issue really was you played a season with a Maresca side, and everything was geared up to play that style of football, and then you appointed two managers that sort of had no intent of playing that game, and and struggled to cope. And then, yeah, don't get me wrong, you could have gone down the Southampton route and tried to play the football that you played in the Championship and got hammered that way too. It's easy with hindsight to pick apart and go, "Oh, this might have worked, this might have worked." The reality is that the side isn't strong enough, and the reason the side isn't strong enough is because we had that many financial issues through years of mismanagement that's caused those issues, basically.
How do we solve this problem for promoted clubs, Sam? It's something
Um,
I'd ask both Paul and Matt, who are obviously going to go down with you. And it's a difficult one to analyze. So, got a huge club like Leeds are about to come up. And I think most of us going, we've got any chance of finishing above Wolves next year? And you think, well, if Wolves keep their manager and their players, no. And
yeah,
yet your team, Bradley's been the closest, with all due respect, to looking like you were going to go this year.
Mm.
I think
Yeah.
it's so difficult. The gap is so big and only getting bigger. And the reason is purely financial. What it will take is it will take a couple of brave clubs you know that throw everything on staying up, and
D- d-
that's a reality.
Does your club have money now, or is it just restricted?
I think it's a bit of both. Um, I think I think though, if the club would find the money, if they, if there were no restrictions, the club would go out and find the money that they needed to do the things that they could do. But the worry really is, and it'll be interesting how Forest fare next year. Obviously, if they get in the Champions League, it'll be slightly different, and that will change it. But they're similar in the sense that they've spent a lot of money, and at some point, those questions come back, and you have to be a little bit more careful with what you've done. The reality for Leicester really is that they spent the money going back 4 or 5 years on the assumption that they were going to get Champions League football, and failed 2 years on the spin, and sort of massively failed. They had, well, they basically did what Forest have done this year, and they deserve to get Champions League football on the reflection of 36 games, if you like, and bottled it towards the end. And we've faced the sort of costs of betting everything on black and it coming red. And you're asking clubs to do that, and realistically, the safer option is probably to yo-yo, and to be a Burnley and hope that one year it clicks, and it doesn't take long for it to click the one year, and then you're a Bournemouth, or you're a Forest, and like you can look at Forest and say, well, they should have gone down the year that they didn't. Even a Villa like that. I know it's easy to say one moment, but the VAR goal against Sheffield United, that goes different, and all of a sudden they're not playing Champions League quarterfinals. They're doing the same thing that Leicester are. To answer your question, I've gone long-winded to not answer that. I don't know. I don't know what
I
they can
don't
do.
think any of us know. And I think, like, from a neutral perspective, all should be becoming a little bit concerned about it. And Sush and I had a conversation on Monday as well about it's not just the bottom end of the Premier League, it's the top end of the Championship, because you'll be close to going back up. I don't think
Yeah, yeah.
there's much doubt about it. And so
Well,
so
it,
will
it
Southampton and
depends.
Ipswich.
It depends. The Leicester, the reason why Leicester fans are worried is because there's the sort of like systemic failings from a management upper management point of view, and the concern is that this could start a free fall. And you look at a side like Cardiff who look like they're going to get relegated this year, and that's a large side that's all of a sudden going to be playing League One football. Birmingham last year is sort of similar. And you look at the way sides poorly ran sides have ended up like that. Reading the same, and these are sides that were established sort of Premier League sides and then a fell away. And we've done that once and been down to League One, and we were able to get up and out quickly. And it needed, the sort of the change of ownership. And I think that's what the worry is. But like you say, if we keep the players, our squad will be too strong. But the problem you've got is there is a big gap between your playoff or just outside of playoff championship side and the side that you have to have to survive. You look at Wolves, and the perfect example with the two of us here, and you go through man for man. That side was stacked with quality, and that's a side that it.
But in
Well, obviously,
fairness
there's
to Pereira particularly, it didn't 5 months ago, right?
yeah, to an extent, but there
The
was
individual quality
always
of the Gomez's,
individual
Andres, and
quality
Cunhas,
of
I hear you.
players. Like um, even when we played that game against Wolves, uh, if I'm right, I think it was just when Cunha should have been banned, and then the ban didn't come through in
That's
time, and
correct, yeah.
and as a Leicester fan, you were thinking if he misses that game, that is a big, because although Wolves have not been playing well to that point, you still thought there is a guy that will kill us off, and a bit like the year Leicester got relegated, and obviously they shouldn't have, because they were stacked with that much talent. You got players in that Leicester side that gone now. Like Tillemans was one of has been one of the players of the season, really. Barnes, albeit only recently, but he's having a great year now, and scoring goals for Champions League sides. And even a Castagna, and players that have gone on to do well. There was so much
Whereas
talent
your
in
your
that.
best player from your promotion team sat on Chelsea's bench all season.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And we lost our manager, we lost our best player, and yeah, I guess we'll never know. But has Maresca done a favour in even buying Dewsbury Hall? Just because the club needed the money. We've signed. Who could we sign? We bought Edouard in. He's played. I think he's played as many games for Palace as he has for Leicester since this season. And we've had
Good
him since
stat.
the end of August.
Edwards
But
at Leicester.
yeah,
Bradley's like,
I don't
what?
know he was.
yeah.
He does need the reminder, Brad. So ultimately, Bradley, you've survived because can you give the glasses back based on
Yeah,
what
that's what
Sam
it is.
said? Because obviously, had you lost at the King Power that day, it obviously might have been
Don't
very
get me wrong.
different.
I do still think that I don't think we would have been good enough, and I think Wolves would have caught
I
us
hear you.
anyway. But yeah, you never know, do you?
No, I mean, if you suddenly had that 8 point lead, and who knows, maybe then they don't beat Manchester United 3 days later, and suddenly it was flipped the other way completely, where they were above you within like a week, basically. That makes a massive, massive difference. Bradley, as someone who's been down now, the sort of the last few years and on the cusp of concern, I'd say, since like Nuno went, how do you view next season? Like if I said to you now, which of the current 17 teams that are going to remain in the Premier League, who would you say is most likely to finish 17th?
Uh, Probably from what I see, West Ham.
Oh, it's a good job that I do Clash of the Correspondents and not Suj, so you'll be back next season, mate. But you can't see West Ham going down, can you? Let's sell it that way.
No, they won't go
So
down.
this is the point, isn't it?
You need to get lucky these days. I think you need to have a strong director of football if you're coming up. You need to have a clear plan. And you
And
need to
West
be
Ham have
so good
people
at
like
recruitment.
Bowen, Paquetá, Kudos, Fulkrug was up front for Germany last year. The great Max Kilman, Bradley, who I know you very sorely miss.
Don't
But
they?
they've got players you think they won't go down.
No, and they can probably pay a high wage to one other player if they really needed to, because London poor.
Yeah, it will that perspective of it will certainly help. All right, let's talk a little bit of fantasy then, because I think your assets are in demand this week, Bradley. First and foremost, are you free hitting?
Yeah, got to.
Okay. Sam, are you?
I am, yeah.
Right, okay. I'm not, so this will be interesting. I'm going to ask this question first to Sam. How many balls are you going to have, Sam?
I will have as many Wolves as I can. I'll have all three of them. Yeah.
There's no way to fudge four, Sam, here, I'm afraid to
No.
tell you.
Don't.
Yeah. If I could, I would. If I could have 11, I think I'd be
I'm
tempted.
the only person who can put a claim to having four assets against Leicester in the same game this season, and it didn't quite work out the way it should have in game week one. Bradley, are you going to go treble Wolves, mate?
Yeah, why not?
So the
Sounds fun.
bleach is safely put away.
It's been put away for a few weeks, to be fair.
Okay. First and foremost, am I right in saying there are no midfielders here to consider?
Uh, no, I don't think so. Can't,
None.
unless you're a crazy person who loves Manetzi and wants him to back. That was a train for a while, wasn't it?
Well, I
Jump
guess
on
there will
Manetzi.
be a group of people who think, right, I want to go one Wolves, maybe Jimenez, one Isak, one Isak, and two would be handy, and go one defensive because you don't want to go double defensive. I can understand people. I want a Wolves midfielder. I suppose by default, because of Bellegarde's injury, Manetzi would be the one. Would he'd have to be if people wanted to
Uh,
do that?
if you're really desperate,
But basically, it's a no. Right. So
yeah,
if people are going free, that means it's double defense unless you go Cunha and Larsen. But it's written all over your face, Bradley. You're going to go Cunha and Larsen, aren't you?
yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Sam, you think the same?
Well, so I have a bit of a vendetta against Larson. I owned him for a
The best
long
Norwegian.
time. I owned him for a long time, and I was at the Wolves game. The game we've spoken about, and I watched him. As someone who I was unsure, I was like, why do I own this? And I was like, I kind of jumped on it because everyone was tweeting about him. I hadn't really watched him. I watched him and I was like, this guy is one of the worst footballers I've ever seen in my life. He was hideous. And I sort of had my mind made up and I was like, okay, there's that is one of them, it'll come over. And in his defense, since that day, um, he has been like a revived man. When I've watched him, he's looked sharp. I don't know if he was carrying a knock to that period. Pretty much since I sold him, and I held him for so long that I had like other fires that were going, and it was kind of one of them. Every time I played him, he blanked. So I'm unsure about that because I do trust my eye test, and especially when I've watched people in the flesh, and genuinely I've spent a good time watching him. I mean, I will probably go with him anyway, just because of the fear of missing out. That being said, we've not scored. We've scored. Well, we got no clean sheets in. I think it's something like 29 games since we last had a clean sheet. Um, and we've scored two goals, and they were both in the same game since January. Would I put anyone off having double sort of Wolves defense? Absolutely not. The only reason that might not happen is, as anything, and you might get a deflection or a free kick or a penalty or something stupid like that. But yeah, I would not be against having
Do,
double Wolves
do you
defense.
think you'll score at the weekend,
No,
Sam? No,
No,
right, okay.
no.
Bradley, do you think they'll score?
Uh,
You're going to say yes.
Probably no.
Well, you're going to break yourself for a clean sheet. I've known
Yeah,
you
we've got.
years, and I reckon this will be a
I know
first since
we've got
Nuno
big
left.
hopes in it.
I
We've got
think it's difficult, isn't it?
Agbadou,
Because like every time we think of football games, you kind of it's hard to be certain that
pessimism.
that
Yeah,
there's going to be a clean sheet. Um, and I've probably been burnt a little bit by that, in just kind of thinking there's no way that we're going to not score again. And I know we had a disallowed goal against Liverpool, but even then, like we didn't really create much, like indeed he hit the post from 25 yards and that was about it. Um, so I think sometimes you just kind of have to take a look at the stats and go, there is a reason that Leicester aren't scoring any goals, and that reason is because they are not very good up front.
So,
I think
but
Wolves will have a tight grip on the game as well. To be fair, I can see Andre like just really running the game.
I think as well, Bradley, I don't, because you're on such a good run at the moment, and it is worth saying you've won 5 games in a row, and it's absolutely brilliant. The 5 teams you've beat are all shit. Fair?
Yeah.
You beat a heavily rotated Manchester United. You beat my team. You beat Sudge's team. You beat Southampton. You beat Ipswich. So Leicester completes the set of nearly the bottom 6, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Pretty much.
Yeah, but I honestly, Leicester are 10 times worse than anyone out there. We are I haven't watched that much Southampton. I have no. It is honestly, it is near unbelievable that there is a side that many points below us because the Leicester are the worst side I've ever watched in the Premier League. Um, they are
How did you
awful.
take 4 points off my team? I swear to God.
Honestly, I don't know how that we are the worst side I've ever watched in the Premier League.
Sam,
We
I
are, we
will
are
tell you
genuinely
to your
that bad.
face what I've been telling the listeners for a number of weeks is that I think Southampton will go to your place and beat you next week.
Yeah, I couldn't see. I can't see. I've been saying that to Southampton fans, and it's funny because Southampton say like, "Trust me, we are the worst side." That and both of us who don't watch. I don't watch any Southampton. They don't watch any Leicester. Um, but we are so bad. Like I said to you, earlier, we can concede in any way imaginable. Anyone in that Wolves side can score at the weekend, and that's why it's so hard to say these are the 3 you want. And for
sorry,
people that are
Central.
on for people that are on a free hit, I don't hate people going, I've got a bit of a feeling that this person's going to score. I'm just going to chance my arm because the goals could come from anywhere. Trent scored a left-footed strike, his first one in his career. Beto scored 2 goals. Grealish scored against
Worth
us.
saying, Sam, just
Hoyland
jump
scored
in.
against us.
There's been a few slappings in now, and it seems to have progressively got worse and worse and worse in the home games, particularly. And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
the home
that's
games.
also you're better off playing away from home at the moment in a weird way because the
Yeah, the
environment
fans,
is
it's that
obviously,
toxic, and
yeah,
yeah, at least
exactly
away
that.
from home, you
But
have a structure.
within some of the recent ones, and I know Liverpool missed a shitload of chances on Sunday, but ultimately you lost to a left-footed strike from a fullback, and also very recently you lost 1-0 at Chelsea with
Yeah,
a
yeah.
left-footed strike from a fullback. Bradley, Rayan Ait-Nouri, talk to me.
Get him. Yeah, he's the one to pick
He's
if
not a
you want a Wolves
fullback though.
defender.
He's a winger masquerading as a fullback, isn't he? It's different.
His position is just football. No, he just plays. Playing player.
He's Ait-Nouri's the outstanding one to go for, isn't it? Money for free
Yeah.
hitters is not going to be an issue this week, I don't think.
No, to be fair, Agbadou probably due a goal. To be fair, he hasn't
You wouldn't
scored
pick
yet.
him
You
over
wouldn't do it
Ait-Nouri, would
though.
you, Brad? It's a bit dull,
Not
isn't
on a
it?
free hit.
Would
No,
you captain Ait-Nouri?
Wow. That's the
no.
intro.
No, but I think people will, and
Captain
I
Isaac.
don't really hate it because in my mind that genuine because we're that bad, I'm sort of seeing him as a base of 6 points,
That's
and then
interesting, Sam. I've got to be honest. I've not for a moment, and I'm not free hitting this week. And Bradley, for your information, I might be buying Cunha and Larsen for 1 week. That is a possibility. I have to say, Sam, I wouldn't consider captain either of them for a moment.
no, 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 neither would I.
That's because Salah's playing my team ultimately. But I would go Isak against Ipswich as well
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
ahead of
yeah.
that.
You're probably right. But I think that there will be. I think Ait-Nouri's got a 15, 18 pointer in him. I
It just
genuinely,
was against Tottenham a couple of weeks ago.
yeah. But I do genuinely think that because I almost think like he starts on six, and that is how players that are playing against Leicester have been.
He's the top
Defensively.
defender in the league, isn't he, for goal contributions now in the Prem?
Didn't
I
you had a
think
stat that I read out on the podcast? Was he was in the top five, wasn't he, for defense
he's
for
in the top
contributions for
three in
defenders?
European football. Yeah, yeah,
Top three
yeah. I think he was. Yeah.
for attacking returns. That was after the Tottenham game. I don't know if that's still correct. Yeah, top three for defenders and top five leagues in terms of attacking returns. And yet everyone thinks he's been a troll all season, which is quite interesting. But his returns, Bradley, have tended to come in some of the more difficult games, haven't they? That's why I think the community feels that. Because when you had the easy run, he was doing daft things like getting sent off after full time against Ipswich.
Yeah, but Ait-Nouri is not a troll. You just need to keep hold of him. Like he'll create again. He's one of them players that can do it against any opponent. So you just need to keep hold of him and be patient.
If you were free hitting this week and going double defensive, Bradley, what two?
Uh, Probably Agbadou and Nouri.
Not Semedo.
No, Semedo doesn't offer
That's the
anything really.
interesting one. Is it pick the two wing backs? No.
No, Semedo doesn't get in the box. Doesn't really cross the ball that much. There's no.
Okay. What's the? I know it's Tuesday night. What's the situation with Jose Sá as it stands?
They haven't really said nothing much. I think it was just he always has this one game a season where his back gets hurt in the warm up, so he'll probably be all right.
If Bentley's in goal, though, I mean, he's done all
It
right at the
doesn't
weekend. He's kept
matter.
a clean sheet.
You got
I
anyone
know,
in there?
no, no, no. Bradley doesn't rate Bentley, Sam, bud.
He's a bit dodge, but he's a bit dodge, but
So
he's all right.
I get the vibe then that you're going to go Ait-Nouri, Larsen, Cunha, or are you going to put Agbadou in?
I don't think I'll put Agbadou in, but I kind of want Raul to be fair. Again, this
Oh,
mini's
oh,
injured.
right. Well, why don't you
Raul's
do
got a
that?
good record against Southampton.
Bradley, you're on free hit. You go all three Wolves attackers. All right,
Maybe
so
I'll put Manetzi in. I'll finally be the
go
Christ.
row him. Why don't you go you put Adama Traore in as well? Why don't you just like go
Got
for it
old
properly,
school.
mate? Yeah,
Jota.
forget Isak. It's not really a thing, mate. If it's a choice between Cunha and Larson, in seriousness, because I think if Muniz is ruled out for Fulham, you can see people want to go, yeah, Isak, Jimenez, one of the Wolves. Me and Suja had a conversation on Monday's pod, and we discussed probably Cunha. But I'd also, a little bit like with Sam's circumstance, we also went Larson earlier in the season and he did fine, but it was like, should have paid the extra for Cunha. And our kind that was our learning was if that comes up again, we'll go Cunha. Larson's been in brilliant form. You're saying Cunha didn't play great on Sunday, but also he only needed a bloody assist for 8 points, mate. And
Yeah,
that's it
he's a bonus
with Cunha
magnet.
as well, isn't it? A goal is probably going to be his first goal's worth 7 near enough, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. It's explosive nature as well. Like when he made a sub, Larson was the first to come off.
That is the one thing I was going to add. From a Leicester point of view, uh, my worry is that you probably do have to think who comes off if the game's done at 55 minutes, and there's every chance that could happen on a free hit. And
But I
then
don't think for Bradley's team, they don't play till like next Friday night. I don't. It's not like you
Yeah,
worry
in
about
one
midweek
sense.
football, Bradley. I don't think that's a thing, is it?
No,
It'd more like give
no,
someone a clap at the end, isn't it? More like.
yeah, pretty much. Like Cunha will stay on the pitch most of the game. To be fair, with all his name being in the headlines this week, he will probably like put on a show because that's the sort of player he is.
Okay, so you're saying Cunha of the two, then?
Yeah, because he's more just the more explosive nature. Like it can come from anywhere. With Larson, it will be likely that he's going to be a poacher. Whereas
And
Cunha, anything.
I take it for people buying, it's the same answer. It's Cunha, yeah. It's not a reason not to.
Yeah, yeah, no reason not to.
And there will be a number, obviously, wild card in this week. Ait-Nouri the one.
Yeah, if you want to Wolves defender,
Sam,
I feel like Wolves has gone.
you've got Southampton at home and Ipswich at home as your last two home games, mate. Sell me
no,
something,
there
mate,
is
for wild
not a
carders.
single occasion where I would recommend. Who would you even pick?
But who's the cheapest player you got? And Sam's so shocked about that. He's completely frozen by the looks of it. All right, Sam's back. All right, who's the cheapest Leicester player, Sam? Come on. Southampton and Ipswich at home. There must be an enabler there. My mate Vout Fast, Mr. Sideshow Bob too himself. There must be something there I can
I
consider.
don't think there is. I don't think there is. I mean, if who would you even? Maybe Mavididi. Uh, if you really force me to, um, he's probably the one that's looked a little bit exciting. You know, against Liverpool, he had a pretty
Why
good
did he
game.
not play for so long, mate?
I've no idea. I've no idea. I've no idea, and that's why Leicester fans have struggled because you know we get that we've tried to be solid and you know we've tried to not lose games and stay in the games long. You know, but in Mavididi we do have a player that will go by a man. You know, and we were playing week in week out with Jordan Ayew in the side and you know just trying to hold the ball up and win fouls in the opponent's half and that was pretty much the entire game plan. Um, was can we stay in this game till the end, which is fine if you then have the ability to score goals at the end.
Even game week one, when Cooper was in charge, I was in the pub outside your place. It's like, where's Mavididi? Why isn't he in the team? Because he was the one we were all looking forward to seeing the most. And Sam was looking forward to it so much that he's frozen again by the looks of it. Sam's put another 50p in the meter, so he's back. What about a Jamie Vardy swan song goal, Sam? I mean, is he going to finish at the end of the season or is he going to carry on?
Who knows? Who knows? He put a recent post on saying that the season was quote unquote a shit show, which is probably putting it lightly. Has he? Does he have the? He's probably not at the level, you know, to really carry on. And it's been a shame because he's a sort of a club legend, and you never want to see it go out like that.
Greatest ever player for
Um,
you in the
yeah,
club's history? Yeah, that's
yeah,
right. I
yeah,
think,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. You know, it's hard because people might say a Banks or a Shilton, and you know, but the majority of people, you know, are not understanding that style and never got to watch that. So yeah, for everything that he's achieved, and he's not technically the best player that's ever played for Leicester. You know, there've been players that have sort of come in and gone, and you know, and people would say maybe a Mahrez or, you know, players that, but for sheer what he's won, you know, and staying with it, especially when we got relegated to stay with it. And it was a shame because it would have been perfect if he'd have had a good season and we'd stayed up, and then he could have probably hung the boots up, and you know what an end to the career that would have been. Um, I wouldn't blame him if he said, right, let's get one last payout in the MLS or you know something similar.
He's got
And
investment in the club out there, isn't he?
yeah, I think
Not in
I
the
think they're in the
MLS. I think
second
it's
tier.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, why not? Why not go and play in that and earn as much money as you can, and you know, a bit of a story up. That's got to be a better option than playing 46 games in the championship with us next season. You know, like for
Yeah.
him, I wouldn't begrudge it in as
Yeah,
first.
I think as well, when you see your heroes regress, and he's a player who's relied so much on pace as well,
Yeah, yeah.
you kind of want to, I think,
It's sad. It is
yeah,
sad. It's like it's like an
move
old
it on.
dog in it. You know,
And it's
like
not like he's not out there not trying or giving it 100% or
no, no,
whatever.
no.
No.
And no one, no Leicester fan would ever accuse him of that. And
Nah,
it's a shame because it's got to the point where even Leicester fans are kind of saying
he
he
shouldn't
can't be
play.
in the side. Well,
Yeah.
he should play because we've got no one else. But had we have someone
You got
else,
Odds on Edouard. Bradley's just found
yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Patson Daka, Iheanacho is
That genuinely shocked me. That did. That
currently
genuinely.
playing for Borough. But yeah, yeah, Edouard, yeah, crazy.
I want to ask you about the keeper, Sam, before we finish, because you spoke really highly about him when we last recorded with you with Adam Pritchard. I've been watching quite closely since. I'm not
You know,
convinced, mate.
really,
No,
really.
not at all.
I think we'll have to disagree on that one. I think he's top draw, and I think he will go on to play at a very high level. Not that the Premier League's not a high level, but
Do you think he would get
um,
bought by a Premier League club this summer?
yeah, 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 yeah,
That's interesting. Bradley?
yeah.
What their goalie? I
Well,
don't.
you'll probably be one that would be in the market for a keeper, I suppose.
I think we should be in the market for a goalie, but Jose Sarr just seems to live on.
I
Okay.
could
I'd
see
rather
a I
still
could see a
keep
Man
Sarr in
City.
goal.
I could see him at Man City.
Well, I think
Um,
it's been reported this morning they're signing Costa from Porto.
oh really? I hadn't seen that to be fair. Um, I I would expect Maresca to go after him, but
He needs to be in a
they've
job
not long
though.
signed. Well, yeah, true. Um, yeah, they've not long signed that keeper Jorgensen. Um, and then you never know with Chelsea, do you? They'll come with something random, but like I honestly I think he's top level.
All right, we'll stick with him. Before we do correct score predictions, I've got a question for you both. Bradley, give me a percentage chance of Vitor Pereira being your manager in game week 1 next season.
Probably about 80%, something like that.
And Sam, percentage chance of Ruud Van Nistelrooy being your manager in game week 1 next season.
I will say 5%.
So there is a chance.
I think there's a chance, but the chance will only be if we can't afford to get rid of him and he for some reason decides, you know what, like I need to wrong this wrong or right this wrong. And prove to people that because his stock will be low because he has been one of the worst ever managers in Premier League history, statistically. So it may be that he goes, the only way back is if I get Leicester back into the Premier League.
Are you convinced he's a bad manager? Like, is there
Um,
a chance you go down, you keep him, and he does well?
I think the only way that that would happen is uh, he would have to be given the ability to have a complete overhaul, and set the side up how he wants the side to be set up. And my worry would be that he'd be trying to make work something that he doesn't want to work. And that would be the concern, really.
All right. I wish you luck, Sam, very much so next season because I enjoy Leicester as an away day. It's fucking easier to get to than Burnley. Hi, Jack. Hope you're well, mate. Right, let's do correct score predictions before we finish. Bradley,
I'll go 3-0.
all I can think of you is
Still
the geezer
away.
with the bleach gif. It's you, mate. Go on, Sam.
Yeah, I'll go 3-0 as well.
Wow. I probably wasn't going to go that high. I'll go 2-0, I think. But yeah, there's every chance, Bradley, I might be buying both of your forwards this week. Ask James for you tomorrow, 12 p.m. UK time, guys. Clash of Correspondents next week. And I can only say at the moment he's still scheduled to be, as it stands, Nottingham Forest versus Brentford with Mark Southerns and Tom Med, which sees me to say thanks very much to Bradley and Sam. Good luck, gents. Cue music, please, man child.